Driver.
Yeah, you do. Hi there.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. My name is Celeste. I've been on this before, but not recently. I'm trying to put it through my nice little car audio, but for some reason it's not going. But I am pulled over right now. I do have to do some driving, but
Well, we're glad you're here. I see Lynette just came on screen, and so did Pastor Leah. I want to welcome you and Rosalie and Millicent. Um, we uh, we never are sure how many folks we see in a group like this, uh, and we always welcome the latecomers, and sometimes there are some. So I'm Denny Emmert. For those of you who can't read my screen, uh, and we've got Stuart and we've got Derek also here. We plus one other person make up the kind of the lead team for this group, and we're always looking for more input and looking for folks to be a part of it. We've been very pleased. I'm always concerned uh, about what kind of reach we have, and every time I bring that up to Dawn Taylor Storm, our I guess she's assistant to the bishop now, she keeps saying, "Well, I brag about this group all over the jurisdiction because we're doing something nobody else is doing," and that's good stuff for me. And we hope it's helpful to you. We're always open to suggestions about areas that you need to have addressed, topics that you'd like to have addressed, and that's just where we are. So. Well,
I'm gonna mute myself so you don't get my road noise. I may stop video for a bit, so I'm not checked, but I'll be watching you. You just won't be watching me.
You'll be watching. We just won't be watching you. Okay,
yeah, but I'll unmute myself when I have something to say. But thank you guys. Good to be with you.
That's fair. Good to have you. I see Trizella just came in. Is that Trizella?
Yes.
Or is there somebody hiding behind her? Okay.
It's me.
Okay. And well, we got a few more coming in here. Cab and Lisa. Well, good. Goal setting is always an interesting piece because, as I'm sure we'll find out with Steve, we're never sure whether we got there or not. But unless we look, unless we know where we're going, we never know whether we got there or not. So it's an important piece, and sometimes we just do things from time to time that we just think feel right and have no goals, and we have no, we just basically do them for ourselves. So for those of you who are just coming in, we're just waiting a couple of minutes to make sure we got you can all get those folks who are coming can get the full scope of Steve's presentation. He's been with us before, as you know, and I'll turn to Derek in a minute to introduce him. So, while there's still folks still coming in, let's just pray together. Lord, we're grateful for this time together tonight. We're grateful for this technology that allows us to gather this way from California and Pennsylvania and whoever else knows where on the road. It's good to be able to participate in groups like this where we can find support for each other and get resources to help us deal with issues and concerns that we have. We're grateful for the opportunity. We're grateful for Steve and his presence with us tonight and his ministry, and each one who comes tonight. Now we ask your presence to be with us, and we ask that you would inspire Steve, and you would help us to hear clearly and find value in what we hear, that we can use it to do your will in our congregations. Hear us, Lord, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. I'll turn to Derek, and Derek can take it from here.
Sure. I would like to welcome Reverend Steve Petty this evening. If you've been with us for the past few years, you might actually recognize him because he's been a great partner to the Small Church Network. We've had him, I think, consecutively in March for the last 3 years, right? It sounds right about right. He's a retired elder in the California Pacific Conference, and he's been coaching pastors and churches for many years, and I can personally attest to that. He has been coaching me for a little bit, for the past year, actually, and I've benefited from his insights. And I got to say, his website has a ton of resources. We'll make sure we share that link this evening. And I just found out that in his free time, he rides in a bike gang, 10 speeds, not motorcycles. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Derek. Welcome all. Good to see you. Even if I just see your titles there. Yeah. So I want to talk about coming out of pandemic times, our churches started back up, and everybody kind of was eager to get back to doing what they'd been doing before. And yet the pandemic dramatically shifted how we understand church. For better, for worse, all of our churches had to shift and tilt and do all kinds of crazy things to get through the pandemic. And now we're coming out of it. And what do? The easiest thing to do is to do exactly what you did before and hope that that's going to continue to work. But what I'm hearing from the churches that I serve is that if you do what you did before, it probably is not working now like it worked before. And so a lot of churches are saying, well, what do we do next? How do we decide what to do? And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because my experience with churches planning for what to do next is that most of the time they do a bad job and they end up planning to do what has failed them in the past as a new strategy. And that won't work. So today what I want to talk about, I'm going to give you certain things not to do. So first of all, things not to do, then I'm going to give you some things to do instead, and then I'm going to give you 3 steps to think about in terms of planning for your church's next step. Okay? You with me?
Mm-hmm.
Nodding is good, because then I know you're not totally comatose. Okay. Usually churches like to do planning meetings, and they'll get together and have an afternoon meeting and get everybody together and they'll plan. This is what we want to do. That's number 1 thing not to do. Have a planning meeting where you invite the congregation to dream about what they would like to do. For years when I was younger, I worked in youth work, and it's kind of like asking the junior high group what they want to do. What they want to do is go to parties and have pizza and have ice cream. Pretty much every time. The second thing not to do is to write a mission statement first. You're laughing. I got a laugh there. Okay, thank you, Lynette. Everybody in organization development for the last 50 years has said the first thing you need to do is to write a mission statement. And that way you know what you're doing. So write this mission statement. And then the church sits down and spends the next 3 hours wordsmithing a mission statement. And they have 45 minutes left at the end of the time to plan for what they're going to do next year. But they've got a mission statement. And what do they do with this mission statement? They write it down on a piece of paper, put it in the minutes, stuff it in a folder, and never look at it again. And they just spent 3 hours and most of their creative time doing this mission statement. Don't do a mission statement. Please don't. Don't spend any time with it. Don't spend any time wordsmithing it. Don't even think about it. It will come to you. Trust me. Third thing, don't spend more than 5 minutes lamenting. Okay, so we have Psalms that are really good at lamentation. I mean, if you want to lament, we can sit down and we can all lament together. We can read the Lamentations. And generally, when I meet with a church group, the first thing I want to do is to let them lament. And so I ask them, why is your church not growing rapidly? And they give me all of the reasons, and they're always the same. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough money. Our buildings cost too much to run. The bishop won't give us what we want. The conference isn't resourcing us. You've heard all those things. Well, it's valuable to let them do that. Get it out of their system. It's poison. Just, get all the poison out, but don't spend more than 5 minutes with it. As soon as you spend about 5 minutes with it, saying, thank you so much for that. Now we're going to move on and leave all of that stuff behind, because it's not helpful. It won't do anything for you. Fourth thing not to do. Do what all the successful churches in your area do. Okay, another thing churches like to do is they say, well, First Baptist Church, has a youth bell choir that's just a killer thing. If we had a youth bell choir, it would be really, really cool and everybody would come. Well, okay, maybe, but maybe not. or you go to a conference with Adam Hamilton at Church of the Resurrection, and he tells you what the latest greatest thing to do is, and those are absolutely applicable if you have a church of 10,000 people. It was really be helpful stuff. My experience is that most people in really small churches don't come home with a single useful thing out of those kind of conferences, because they're just not applicable to their little tiny unique situations. We have to think in slightly different ways when we're thinking about our small little churches and how we kickstart them. So don't get excited about what everybody else is doing that's successful. I've taken churches that were in a community where every church was doing this successful thing over there, and we've just gone exactly 180 degrees in the opposite direction and had great success with it. So sometimes counterproductive is most productive. So don't do what successful do. Fifth thing not to do, try to reinvent the past. You sit down with your congregation and they're all 85. And what they want to tell you is the church that they want to create is the one that they started coming to when their children were in the nursery school. Am I right? So they want to reinvent the past. And that's great. They'll tell you what we really need is this and this and this, because that's what we had back in 1957. Well, okay, if we wake up tomorrow morning and it's 1957, that will work. Absolutely. If we wake up tomorrow morning and it's 2024, not so much. So don't try to reinvent the past. Don't look at all of your liabilities. It goes along with the Lamentations, but we have a list of liabilities. Well, we're just not going to be able to. Don't spend time looking at your liabilities. And seventh, try to do things you don't know how to do. We'll get back into that when I talk about things to do, but I know a lot of churches that say, well, what we really need to do is, and it's always something that they absolutely don't know how to do. And guess what? If you don't know how to do it, you're going to do a bad job of it. And doing a bad job of something is not a way to attract new people. So don't do things you don't know how to do. Things to do instead. Do a lot of research before you have a planning conference. I can't say enough about this. Your conference should be able to give you access to Mission Insight or other places where you can get statistical reports. You can look at all of the statistics for your community, the area around your church. And, I typically do 3 or 4 of those. I do one that's maybe 10 blocks. Who is within 10 blocks of your church? Literally, who could walk to church? And then I do about a 2-mile and a 3-mile and a whole community thing, just to look at who it is that we're actually talking about. Usually, older churches, smaller churches, may or may not reflect the community that lives right around the church. I've served churches that reflected the congregation that lived around the church 20 years ago. And most of them have moved away, but they still drive in because that's their church. But the people that live in those communities 20 minutes away aren't going to be the ones that are going to come to that church. They don't have those same ties and roots that are going to get them to that church. Who is going to come? The people who live closest. So you do your research and you figure out what is the average travel time of people in your community. I once served a rural community. The average travel time was 30 minutes. In order to get to the bank, in order to get to the grocery store, in order to get to the feed store, you traveled 30 minutes. And so going 30 minutes to travel to church, that was nothing. That's what they did. Other churches were in urban settings. They're expected to travel about 4 minutes. And 4 minutes will get them to the bank and the grocery store and their bridge club and the church on Sunday. So know what your travel time is. Do your research. Do the demographic work to understand your community. Then note especially 5-year trends. So what is the church going to look, what is the community going to look like in 5 years? It's valuable to know what it's going to look like today. I don't care about today as much as I care about 5 years. If you're going to develop programs and plans, you want to get in front of the population, not serve the immediate population. Because the time it takes you to get everything up and running and doing it well is probably 2 to 3 years. So if you develop it for the congregation that's, I mean, the community that's there now, you may actually be developing for a group that's leaving. So look at the trends. Where is the population going? Who's going to come in 5 years? So that in 3 years, when you get that thing really running well, you're ahead of the population when those people get there. And when they need those things that age group needs, you're there. You've got that. And everybody in town says, oh, well, that's that church. They're doing that really, really well. Things to do instead. Number 2, write a mission statement 2 years after you're doing it. Think about this for a second. You sit down and you start doing, and we'll get to this too when I talk about how to do this. But once so imagine you're actually doing something. You decide on a plan, you decide on a way to go, you develop it really, really well, and you've got it really cranking. Now sit down and say, this is who we are. Write a mission statement that accurately reflects what you're doing now. So after you've been doing it for 2 years and you're doing it really, really well, when you write that mission statement, it actually looks like your congregation. And when you share it with new people, they go, well, of course, that's exactly who you are. So there's this integrity between your mission statement and what you're doing. Third, always turn the conversation to assets and strengths. So we don't want to talk about lamentations and we don't want to talk about liabilities. When people start talking about those things, you say, well, what are our strengths? What are our assets? What is God giving us now? What are the tools that we have now to go forward? Okay? I once served a church and we were trying to decide what we're going to do for a mission project. We sent people off to Africa and they came back with 10 different plans that we could do. And we looked at all the plans and we said, wow, this is going to cost us a lot of money. There's a lot of people. But we looked at the congregation, we discovered we had 4 of the top water engineers in the Southland. People who served major utilities, people who served major construction companies, people who understood water. And so when we looked at the projects that they brought back, we said, we got to do the water project. Why? That was our strength. And lo and behold, we could do that really, really well. And we did. And it was legendary. So look at what your assets and strengths are. You may not have even assessed them. Look at your people and say, well, what are they good at? What do they do? What are the talents and strengths that our congregation has? If you got a congregation that's full of retired school teachers, wow, what an asset. You got a church that's full of retired nurses. Wow, what an asset. What do you do with that? Look at your assets and strengths and look at them with a sense of faith. God has given this to us. How do we use it? God has given us these people for a reason. What are we doing with them? Because very often we don't ask them, we don't assess them, we don't look at it, and we don't realize that as a statement of faith, God has given us these people. And we, if we're faithful leaders, need to use their best skills to the best assets and best ministry of the church going forward. It's a statement of faith. Lastly, things to do instead, have good fun. Seriously, if you're not having fun doing this, you're doing it wrong. Do it in a way that's fun for everybody. Have fun leading and implementing new programs. I always have fun with my people. I tell jokes during the sermon. I make people laugh 3 or 4 times. It's fun to be in faith. It's fun to be loving people. It's fun to be doing the work of the church. If you're not having fun and it's not fun for your people, find something else to do. Because ministry ought to be fun. It ought to be hilarious. If you read the scriptures and you look for the places where Jesus is actually telling jokes, you discover he was a funny guy. He told jokes all the time. How hard is it a rich man to get into heaven? Can you imagine a camel going through the eye of a needle? That's hilarious. It's not metaphorical. It's hilarious. Jesus is telling a joke and everybody would have laughed. Because they can see this big hairy camel. They know what a camel is, and they know what a needle is. They would have laughed. He told lots of jokes. So make it fun. Keep it fun. Now, 3 foundational principles for deciding what to do next. Okay? Number 1, first, do better what you do best. this is an area where most churches make their first big mistake. They sit down and they look at their congregation and they say, well, you know, we don't have any children. We really need to develop a children's ministry. So they set out to get a children's ministry, and I asked them, okay, do you have a nursery? Well, yeah, we have a nursery. Is it clean? I don't know. We haven't been in there in years. Well, when was the last time the toys were sanitized? I'm not sure we have toys in there. Are the cribs legal? Well, we could fix the one in the corner, but I'm not sure. In other words, they're not doing that. They're not doing it best. They're not doing it at all. Don't try to do something you're not doing. Look at your congregation. Say, well, you know, we do this really well. We're known in the community as the church that does this. So maybe on a scale of 10, your church is a 6 at choir. Your music program is a 6. How do you turn it into an 8? How do you turn it into a 9? How do you turn it into a 10? Look at something you know how to do and do it better. And make that, I mean, there's a reason you do that. Your people love doing it. They know how to do it. It's something that they have enjoyed doing for years. And they would love it if there were more resources to do it. Pour your resources into doing something you're doing well better. That's the first thing. Now, that also might mean that if you look at your congregation and you say, well, you know, the average age of the congregation is 75. We've got that new couple that just joined the church because they just retired. They're 66. But, you know, that's the newbies in the church. Well, if you walk in on Sunday morning and you look at the congregation, that's what you see, then who is going to walk in the door and want to stay? People who look like that. So instead of going for a segment of the population you don't have, increase your efforts to get the population that you do have. How do we develop programs for 66-year-old people? How do we develop programs for the 75s? What do we do with our ministry to people who are in that age group so that they get excited about those ministries, because that's the congregation we're serving. So your own people get more excited about what's going on, and they are more inclined to invite friends to join with them. And then when those people walk in on Sunday morning, they say, oh, gee, these people look like us. There's Harry and Sally. Let's go sit next to Harry and Sally. And let Harry and Sally introduce them to Frank and Betty. And before you know it, they're friends with everybody in the congregation. Why? Because they look like them. So develop programs for the areas where you have strengths, not areas where you have weakness. There's time enough to do that later. But in order to get your church to grow again, you need to be doing really, really well what you can do really, really well. Okay? When you do that, strive for excellence. Really push your program to be excellent. You want to be known in the community for an excellent program in that age range, in whatever it is you're doing, that you're doing well now. You want to be known on the community grapevine for the excellence of your program. Put your time and effort into that. A couple reasons for that. One is you want to be known. But secondly, as you look in the future to grow other areas within your church, you've now set a standard. We have a high standard for the programs we have in our church. When we start a new program, it might start out here, but we expect it to grow to this high standard. We're setting standards of excellence for all of our programs. And so, you know, a rising tide raises all boats. You raise the excellence of one program, you will raise the excellence of other programs. If you're happy getting by with mediocrity, and you really don't put in the effort into it and strive for excellence in everything, well, you're going to get mediocre results. That's just what you're going to get. Somebody else in town is going to be striving for excellence, and they're going to get those people. Second thing to do, build better programs for your biggest church demographic. And I kind of alluded to that under the one which is doing better what you do best. But to really look at your church and say, what is it those people are, what do we look like? And how do we develop programs for that group? So that's actually number 2. I got ahead of myself. Number 3 is, and this is only after you've done 1 and 2. Only after you've done 1 and 2, you do 3. And that's to look at what new programs you want to build. After you've got this, the growth and energy coming from this one excellence program that you've got going, what is it we want to start new and develop? Because it will take a lot of energy to do that. And your first program and your second program will give you new energy. It will bring in new people. It will bring in new energy. It will bring in new leadership. And when you ask that group, then what is it that we really want to do that we haven't ever done before, or we really need to do next? What's the next logical thing? Then that group can really help. They can bring their energy and their leadership to those tasks. If you try to do that first, you don't have the energy, you don't have the momentum, you don't have the excellence built into your program to do that, and you will probably fail. You'll spend a lot of time and energy trying to do something you don't know how to do and really fail at it. So don't do that. Now, when you do the demographics, one of the reasons that I said to look 5 years ahead is because, and I'm constantly amazed at school districts. They have demographic departments at school districts. They look at this stuff all the time. And yet, you pick up the paper and they'll say, this year's enrollment of kindergartners is down by 10%. Well, they knew 3 years ago that this year's enrollment was going to be down 10% because there were 3 years ago, those toddlers weren't enrolling in preschools. And now they're not coming to kindergarten. And so that dip in the demographics is going to run through for the next 50 years. And we can see that coming. So let's say you look at your demographics and you've got a whole lot of 3rd and 4th graders in your community. Your 3rd and 4th grade in the school is just really packed. They don't know what to do with it. They've got teachers with double classrooms. But, kindergartners, 1st graders, not so much. 6th and 7th graders, not so much. Work ahead of them. Sure, you want to have a Sunday school for 3rd and 4th graders, but really the question is, can we build a killer youth group for those junior high kids in 5 years? So how do we start the youth group so that when we get to that age group, everybody in town says, oh, well, the Methodist Church has a killer youth group. Those kids come in and they're loving it and they're doing all kinds of fun things. And you've invested the time and energy to be ahead of that population when they get there. So that's how you plan for future programs. Look at the demographic that's coming into it. Maybe the demographic in your area that is coming in is 40s and 50s. I was talking to a church just the other day that wanted to develop seniors ministry and preschool ministries. And I said, well, those are really divergent things. And we sat down and did the demographic look. What's the primary age group in their area? 45. I said, that's exactly the age group you're not serving. Why are you developing 2 ministries for an age group you're not serving? People that are 45 have got elementary and middle school kids. You're talking about preschools and senior ministry. They're not interested in either one of those. So let's rethink this plan that you've got. Lastly, operational guidelines. Plan to do things over a long time frame. This is one of the things that's really hard for pastors to understand. We really would like to see results quickly. Churches don't move quickly. We're the Titanic. We go ahead and run into the icebergs. We don't try to avoid them. But if you're going to avoid them, start turning a day ahead of time. It takes a while to move a church. It takes a while to grow a church. It takes a while to move ministries to the point that they're highly effective. Don't go into it and think, well, we're going to evaluate at the end of the year. I hate churches that set goals and the goals are very specific for in 12 months we're going to have. It's like, no, don't even bother with those. Don't set goals like that. Say, we are going to develop this ministry and we're going to do it over time. Whether it takes 3 or 5 or 6 years, it's going to take time, but we're just going to keep at it and keep at it and keep at it until we get it nailed down. because you may fail the first year, you may fail the second year, but you'll learn and you can fine tune it and you can improve it and you can go forward and build and build and build. And then at the end of 5 and 6 years, you've got a killer program that everybody in town wants to come to because it's just the best around. Did you get there overnight? No. But you got there with persistence and a drive towards excellence, and you got there over the long time frame. And that's what churches do. Churches grow over long time frames, and they decline over long time frames. So try not to do everything at once. As I've given you 3 steps, and I really hope you spend at least 2 years on each step. Okay? 2 years on step 1, 2 years on step 2, 2 years on step 3. So you really are thinking these through, and don't try to do them all at once. I know churches sit down and they say, well, what are the 3 goals for next year? And they just don't have the energy or the personnel or the money or the will to do 3 things. And at the end of 3 months, they're doing exactly what they did before, and none of the new stuff is even being done because, well, we do best what we did before. Status quo has the most energy. So try not to do everything at once. Do one thing at a time and do it well. Next to last thing. Establish your programs before you advertise them. Before you put it in the community newsletter, before you put it in the community letter, before you invite a reporter out to look at your program, before you start putting it on the community grapevine, make sure it's running well. It might mean that you do something for almost 2 years before you say, well, now we're going to invite people in. And the analogy I like to use is if you're going to impress people and you're going to invite them to your home for dinner, you don't invite them in when the living room's not clean, when dinner isn't ready, when you're not ready to entertain. If you're not ready to entertain first class, don't advertise. I know lots of churches they start a program and then they start advertising it. And then the people come in and they look at it and they say, this is really half-baked, or this really doesn't work, or, you're putting out bad news. It's like looking at a bad movie. 10 people will tell you the bad movie that they saw for every 1 person will tell you the excellent movie they saw. The bad news travels faster. So don't invite people to something that's not really, really well done. Spend some time at it, maybe a year or 2, and then when it's really well done, then advertise. Come and see our thing because it's really cool. Lastly, it's hard work, but if you're the leader, stay optimistic and keep it fun. If you stay optimistic, we can do this. I know we can do this. I believe in you. We can do this. This is our thing. This is what we're really good at. We've done this thing already. I just want it to be better. Keep it fun. Keep encouraging them. Be optimistic. And they'll love it. End of presentation. Questions? Don't everybody raise your hand at once.
The biggest challenge for our group is, and we're in South Allentown, is that our community is becoming more and more Hispanic. And a lot of the younger families have moved away. And based on maybe what you're saying, Steve, is maybe we need to look about seniors who are still living in the area who haven't left, because most of our church population is seniors. So if I'm hearing you correctly, maybe we should be focusing on seniors who stayed in the area. Their children may have moved away, but they're still there.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely would. The seniors in your church probably know seniors like themselves that don't come because they're just not interested in church. So you ask them, well, what are they interested in? What would they like to come to? What kind of things could we do for seniors that they would enjoy? How do we do that? What can we do that you would be excited about inviting them to? And once you bring them in and you can, over time, you enlarge that group of people in your church, then you can ask them, well, what would you like to do next? And maybe that's include, maybe some of your seniors get together and do a VBS for Hispanic children and invite lots of kids to come in, and they find out, oh, you do a really good VBS, But first, build up the seniors program so that like I said, when people walk in the door, they'll find people that look like them. I would do that.
Sounds good. I know from experience, so many of the seniors are lonely. They've lost a spouse, or children have moved away and they're by themselves. And I think times of fellowship would be welcomed. Just a chance to have time to fellowship with other people their own age.
You just said what you're going to do next. Loneliness of seniors is epidemic, and we don't talk about it enough. In England, they even developed a ministry of loneliness because there are so many seniors who are lonely and nobody reaches out to them, and a lot of them just stay home or have very, very limited community contact. Sometimes their families don't even connect with them anymore. Having a church that reaches out and says, hey, come be with us. We know what it's like to be a widow. We know what it's like to be a widower. We know what it's like to be alone. But we get together down here and we have fun. We do this. Oh, I might come to that. That's cool. You should do that. I think it would be highly successful.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, if I could. My name's Celeste. I'm from I'm from Cornwall's United Methodist, which is right outside of Northeast Philly on Route 13. First off, I appreciate you speaking about looking at assets and doing an evaluation of what our assets are, like your story about the water engineers. That's fantastic, just to look at congregation, especially, we have those of us who have been there for decades, we might know what each other have, but some of the newer folks that we're blessed to be having, I don't know that we've done that. So that would be awesome. I was wondering, we had a Christmas program, and a small church. We have like 30, 40 worshiping with us, and sometimes like 5, 6 on Facebook also worshiping with us. We had a Christmas program, and we did this goes toward advertising, because we don't have the ability to have a very slick, we don't have like paid music ministers, and I play guitar and stuff, but we had people just do a piece of music. We had some singing from the congregation, and we had people do different musical things, and we advertised it. We did get some folks to come, or friends, invited friends. I think it's easy to feel like we have to have something perfected before we advertise it, and I know you don't want that, because we're not going to be that perfect, but the balance, you also don't want to invite somebody to something that's poorly done. So as best as we can for our level of money, our level of giftedness with our people, do the very best we can with what we have, and then put it out there, rather than thinking that we have to have it slick or like perfection, because that's not the case. And I think in our authenticity draws people to it if we're kind and we're warm, more so than just the thing that they're coming to hear, if it's music or if it's a program. So I appreciate the ministry. Thank you.
Okay, so it's Christmas, right?
That's what we did this past Christmas. Yes, and it worked very well for us. We're thinking about making it, an annual, Christmas.
If that worked and you did that really well and you had success with it, do it again.
Mhm.
And just ask yourself, how do we do it a little bit better next year?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do that would be a little bit more fun,
Sure.
a little bit more Christmassy? What single element could we add this year that we didn't have last year? And then the next year, what element could we add the next year?
Sure.
Always try to make each next year slightly better, so that people begin to anticipate that, oh, I can't wait to go this year and see what's new, because it's not always the same thing.
That's true. And, when you were saying that, just put to mind too that often enough we do something and we don't take the time afterwards to evaluate it amongst those who are running it, to say what could have we done better, like Monday morning, quarterbacks, but look at what went well, what didn't go well, and in the moment while it's fresh, make some of those decisions too, while you actually remember how things went. So thank you.
I've got a whole thing on my website about that. Dennis can send you a link.
Okay.
I believe, so to go off on that one for just a second, I believe in a 12-month calendar. I do everything on a 12-month calendar. It's critical. And as soon as you do your Christmas thing, so as an example, you do the Christmas thing, the next week you sit down with all the primary players and you say, what really worked? What didn't work? We're going to put it on the calendar for next year. So you've got your 12-month calendar. We're going to put it on the calendar for this date next year. You're going to be in charge of this. You're going to do this, but we're going to do this new element next year because we think it'll be cool. So you're already planning a year in advance for what just happened based on the qualitative evaluation that you just did. That's how you drive programs towards excellence. You do an evaluation, you do planning for the next year, and you already assign people to it rather than getting to November and say, oh gosh, who's going to do the children's pageant? Well, no, we already know who's going to do the children's pageant because we planned that a year in advance. Do that for everything throughout the year as it happens. Easter, Christmas, you have holiday things, special things to go on throughout the year. Anything you do in the church that you expect people to come to that's a big thing, sit down the next week and evaluate it and put it on the calendar for next year, including who's in charge of it next year. Quality control is one of the biggest things, and most churches don't do that, but 12-month calendar is critical. I believe in a 12-month calendar, so that's a good way to start. Any other questions? I realize it's almost dinner time. You guys are all tired and ready to move on.
I had a question. This is Millicent.
Hi, Millicent. I
Midtown
love your
Parish.
name.
Thank you. Thank
That was
you.
my mother's middle name.
Great. I used to count them on my 10 fingers. I think I done passed it now. The second one was always a Millicent on Brady Bunch. You mentioned that there was 3 steps, and you said 2 years for each one. Now,
Right.
I wrote down a few things, but can you just identify what the 3 steps were again?
Well, the first one is to do better what you do best,
Okay, I got that.
and spend a couple of years really doing that best, really moving that to an 8, 9, or 10. Secondly is to build programs to your biggest church demographic. Now,
Build
that
to
may
demographics.
be included in one, but it might be slightly different. So maybe it's your choir program that's what you want to improve, but you really want to develop new programs for your seniors age group. And the third one was after you've got 1 and 2 operating well, what new programs do you want to invest in doing?
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Other questions?
This is Pastor Leela again. I apologize I didn't introduce myself the first time around. I'm a very new pastor, so I'm getting acclimated to quite a few things. We've been doing egg hunts and trunk or treats, and we've been giving out information to the children about our Sunday school. We don't really have a staff to work with the children so much, but we've had really good turnouts at these events, but we haven't had anyone coming to the church after that, like starting to attend, to even show up, despite the information that we've given out to the children and little booklets about Jesus loving you and statements on if you want to learn more about Jesus and his love. We invite them to our Sunday school. What do you think about continuing programs like that? As I mentioned earlier, the majority of our congregation are seniors, and kind of based on what I was hearing you saying, maybe we should be focusing more on seniors. So I'd just like some thoughts regarding our egg hunts and trunk or treats, if we should continue that at that point.
Well,
They're successful in the community with excellent turnouts, but we're not seeing anyone following up afterwards.
right. So you're talking about trunk or treat? Which is-
Both trunk or treat and Easter egg hunt.
Okay, Easter egg hunt, people will come out for that even though they don't come to church on Sunday. They'll bring their kids to the Easter egg hunt. That's just going to happen. And trunk or treat generally happens when it's not Sunday morning. You're going to have trunk or treat closer to a time when the kids can come. Those really aren't, those are great programs to get people to know where your church is. But it doesn't tell them what programs you have for them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Your children are not going to come on Sunday morning and do trunk or treat. And they're not going to come on every Sunday morning and do an Easter egg hunt. So what is it that they would find on Sunday morning? So on those Sundays when you have, on those events when you have something big going on, what is the next big children's event you're going to invite people to? Not just Sunday school. If it's Sunday school,
Bible school.
well, it's Vacation Bible School, whatever it is. What's the big children event you're going to invite them to? That's what you publicize. So everybody that comes to trunk or treat gets some candy and they get a flyer about the Vacation Bible School, or they get a flyer about the children's Christmas Eve program, or they get a flyer about this thing is the next big thing that's happening at church that you might want to bring your kids to. You advertise the next big thing. Don't advertise Sunday school, because your Sunday school is boring. Okay. Unless you're willing to rebuild your Sunday school. And a word about that. I went to a church once, and their Sunday school was, they had a retired librarian reading the Bible to third graders in the church library. That was Sunday school. And there were 3 kids there because their parents insisted that they go while the parents went to church. And I said, well, okay, that's not child safe. You only have 1 teacher. What do you do when a kid has to go to the bathroom? All kinds of unsafe things. But 2, that's just boring. The church had never done a VBS in 20 years. So the next summer, we put together a VBS, and we had a preschool with 125 kids in it. And I said, let's have a VBS and we can invite the preschool kids to come. Preschool shuts down for a week. We're going to have preschool, but it's going to be VBS. So that was successful. We had like 150 kids at VBS. About 30 to 40 of them came back to Sunday school, that came back to the Sunday afterwards to come to church because we invited them. They were at VBS, come to church. And there was nothing for them. And I had really worked with the staff to get something really different at Sunday school. And I said, why is it that we've got a killer VBS program where the kids dance, sing, get scriptures, have crafts, all this kind of fun stuff, and they come to Sunday school and we want to hand out a mimeograph sheet and say, this is Jesus. Boring. So it took me 2 years to push the Sunday school teachers to say, Sunday school is going to look like VBS. The kids walk into Sunday school and we're going to start with singing, and then we're going to do a craft, and then we're going to have an activity, and we're going to talk about Jesus, and we're going to talk about the theme, and then we're going to go home. But every Sunday school is going to be just as much fun as a VBS. So we started doing that, and the teachers, they were kicking and screaming. They did not want to do that. They knew how to do Sunday school. They'd done it for 50 years. But we started doing that, and I hired a couple of junior high girls to come in and lead the dancing and the singing. And, in 3 years, we had 50 kids in Sunday school. So think about what your Sunday school is. If kids, I want Sunday school to be so cool that when they bring their kids to church, the kids bring the parents back the next week. That's how cool Sunday school have to be. And if your Sunday school is not that cool, don't advertise your Sunday school. Next question.
Steve, let me remind
Denny.
me that what you just said reminds me of the term or the phrase bait and switch, because it seems to me like that's part of what we do when we do these events, and then we invite them to something that's not like that.
Right.
We kind of say this is who we are, and then we move off on doing something else. And we gave up on doing trunk or treats, partly because there were just so many around that it didn't distinguish us anymore. The last one we had, it rained, And that was a problem for us because we actually had we live in an area where there's some farm territory, and we had a hayride with it. And so you can't do that. And that's part of the reason that people came. We also did something that could get, we could find out who was there so we could follow up with them, send them an email or something welcoming them and saying, this is what's going on next. So there's some important follow-ups that have to go with some of these things as well.
Best way to follow up, have a family photo booth. So one of the things is you've got a car or something that's set up and it's really, really spooky and scary, and you get mom and dad and the kid and you take a family picture. We want to take a picture of your family. Please register your family here so we know how to send it to you. And then we'll send you the electronic file on your email. But that means you got the name, mommy's and daddy's and the kid's name, and you can put those on the thing and you can send them that email. Well, bingo, you've got information about them. And they get a picture from you. And there's a picture on their church, on their mantle at home of their kids at trunk or treat at your church. And they're thrilled to give you their information if they get a free picture. Other questions? Come on, somebody who hasn't said anything yet.
Well, I
Be
don't know
brave.
if I have a question, but I could throw some stuff out that we do.
Sure.
I have a small church in rural Pennsylvania with approximately 150 people on the books. Usually get 40, 50 on a Sunday.
Okay, good.
Our Sunday school died. It had a good death and we left it die. I started when I got there to bring in kids actually into worship. We do neat things with the kids. The fourth Sunday of the month is Make Noise for Jesus Sunday. And no, I'm dead serious. We tell the parents and the grandmoms, you bring your spare change in, and I got old steel coffee cans, and we let all little kids run around with the little coffee can. And I stand up front with the big coffee can, and they get to dump their coins in from up. It makes a ton of noise, especially with my microphone right here. And the kids just enjoy the daylights out of it.
You're having fun.
We had a couple of our people, I guess, having problems with hydration and stuff. So I did what they tell you not to do. I put a pot of coffee right at the front door coming into church. And one of the kids said something off the cuff. Boy, I wish there was something here for us. And the Ford light went on. When you come in, there's 2 big packs of different flavor cookies and coffee. You come a little bit early for church and the kids just devour the cookies. Mom and dad have a coffee. Started off with, I was pouring out half a pot of coffee. Now I'm up to making 2 pots of coffee.
Who told you not
I
to
don't get
put
a
coffee
cup.
in front of the church?
Pardon?
Who told you not to put coffee in the front door of the church?
Oh, it's just, shall we say, at my age, elders?
I want the coffee at a place where the people who are leaving can't get out.
We block the door with people.
You cannot leave the church without going by the coffee area. It's like a gauntlet. And so everybody is out there grabbing their coffee, and there's this gauntlet of people that you have to go through. So people who come to visit for the very first time, you've got to run that gauntlet to get out of church.
Yeah.
I want that coffee pot there right by the front door where everybody's going to stop and get their coffee. The kids are going to get a cookie, and that if there's new people, they're going to be greeted by somebody.
Yes.
And then I train everybody to greet them. So no, that's great. It's absolutely what you should do. Don't listen to the old people.
We no longer have a greeting committee. Everyone in the church is the greeting committee.
Absolutely.
They're extolled to do that.
Yeah, I did away with my evangelism committee. I told them everybody in the church is on the evangelism committee.
You got it. I might be the pastor, but you guys are the ministers. You got to get out there and do stuff.
Good.
Try to get your kids involved in anything that you can. We have Kids Sunday. Usually it's the second Sunday before Christmas. I sit in the pews and the kids do the Sunday service. They play their own instruments. They murder the piano some days, but I mean, but I'll tell you what, with a congregation as small as mine, I'll put over 100 people in the pews. It's you get the kids involved, everyone comes,
And they're having fun.
and they're having a blast.
There you go. Anybody else?
Sunday school is coming back well now. We used to have them come like a half hour before, and that didn't work. We come now, and one of my elders will do a little. She's cute at how she does it. She has a children's Bible, and she'll do a little children's sermon in the front. We bring all the kids up front, and they get to be front and center, and they'll do something, and then they go back to the back of the church and close the double doors, and then they sing a song, and they start doing just what you were saying. I've been up front preaching. I'll get through the gospel, and I'll say, just listen a minute while they sing their song in the back. You should see the smiles on everyone's faces. It's magnetic. It's magnetic.
Great stuff. Great
Yeah.
stuff. Anybody else? Come on. I see a lot of people going like, well, I should ask, but I don't want to ask. I'd be embarrassed to ask.
So here's a challenge. What could we do for Easter Sunday that would be, instead maybe a family photo, something else maybe that we can get people to give their email addresses?
Well, what are you inviting them to on Sunday?
The Easter service.
Just an Easter service.
Yes.
You going to have an egg hunt?
We weren't planning on one.
Okay. So you're not, Easter Sunday is no different than any other Sunday?
Well, good music, but it's Easter.
Well, you're right. So what are you doing this, okay.
Photos.
The Easter Bunny is coming to our church Sunday after service. She's going to
Well, there you
sneak
go.
in the back right at the end of it. We all got together. We bought a bunch of candies and quarters and stuffed the eggs. And Easter Bunny's coming. I can't stop him.
Yeah,
So in response to your question, Betty, I would always try to do one Sunday a month, every month of the year, that was special. And that meant that we made a big thing about inviting people to that special Sunday. A lot of people today, regular church coming is once a month. Some people it's twice a month. Everybody has a different schedule that's regular for them. But I wanted to give 1 month and one, so if it's Mother's Day, if it's Father's Day, it's graduation Sunday. I mean, the built-ins are Easter and Christmas Eve, and you've got all those, so you got a whole bunch of built-ins already. Pentecost I made into a big Sunday. Everybody wear red. We're gonna have red balloons. We're gonna have red cake. We're gonna sing Happy Birthday Church. We're gonna do special things. So one Sunday a month, I made sure that it was special, and there were different things happening that Sunday than ever happened on another Sunday. And we just had to invent them. One Easter, I asked people to bring whatever cultural background they came from. And in the San Fernando Valley, I had like the denomination called me and said, why is your church so multi-ethnic? Because we had just like every continent represented with a cadre of people. But I said, I want everybody to bring a bread that's common to your culture. Every culture has an Easter bread. They do. And so they went, oh, okay. And people went out and baked bread. And then we had this table full of Easter breads with a label on it. This is by Sally and Frank, and it's this Filipino Easter bread that they baked for this. And so there was all this bread, and we advertised, come on Sunday morning for the Easter bread feast. And it was huge. People came and had Easter. Easter egg hunts are popular. If you just do the egg hunt, people will come and leave. But if you do an egg hunt and you've got a booth with an Easter bunny or somebody that you could take a picture or family picture of, you can get those emails and you can get those names and addresses. Any way that you can think of to cleverly get people to sign up for something that you can email them. really works. But having special Sundays once a month, and you can advertise those special Sundays. This month is this. We're going to have a special Sunday for Mother's Day. Everybody gets a carnation, or everybody gets a Mother's Day mug, or something. We're going to recognize the mothers. And I hate recognizing oldest and youngest mothers because it's always Bertha, and she's been here. She's 104. So every year Bertha gets the oldest mother award. But maybe all the mothers who have been mothers for 10 years, and all the mothers who've been mothers for 20 years, and all the mothers who've been mothers for 30 years. That way it rotates every year. Find a way to just celebrate people. Give thanks for people, appreciate people. Make it fun and celebrational. Does that kind of give you some clues?
Steve, Leela here again, Pastor Leela.
You're too courageous, Leela.
Well, I knew it, all of this, and I'm just, doing what God instills in me, I guess. But one of the things I recently did was recognize I did this 2 years now. I've only been there 2 years, and I'm totally new. I came out of retirement, but I decided to recognize our volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a volunteer Sunday. And so, the church would not exist without our volunteers. And nearly every single person in the church was recognized. And then I said a special prayer for all the volunteers. So there's another idea.
I'll give you another one on top of that. Once a year, I would recognize, usually at church conference. I did 2 church conferences, one in January for money, and one in June or July for nominations. And then I would do awards, and I would invent silly awards. So the volunteer of the year, but hardest working janitor award, and the different, the pastor's award this year goes to these 5 people. And, over the course of 10 years, that's 50 people. But in any given year, you've got 1 or 2 people or 3 people or 5 people that really shine. They've done something. One year I had a gal that kept volunteering for things. I gave her the pastoral award for the I'm just a girl who can't say no. I mean, it's for your volunteer of the year. So any number of ways that you can thank people. Volunteer appreciation is gigantic. We don't teach that in seminary, but if you recognize that your volunteers are workers and you need to thank them, and you need to find special ways to thank them, that's a huge thing. And finding a way to do that in church or in front of everybody, more power to you. That's a great idea. Super duper.
Steve, I want to thank you for your time and say, it's been I appreciate your presentation. I appreciate all of you. And by the way, just after we finish this session, please only stay around for a minute because I have a request for you. But Steve, I want to just again thank you again for being with us. A lot of good discussion, a lot of good questions, great presentation, good stuff, folks. Tell your friends. We'll be here in a couple of months. 2 months again, we'll be back with another session. On that session, we will host the general conference team because we're meeting in May. So we'll be focusing on how general conference may impact you, and it'll always impact us. So again, you'll see some stuff go out. We're in some transition with structure in the conference, and we're trying to get the word out properly in the relationship to how we do our stuff. So that's an important piece for us. I'm going to put in the chat my email address. Because one of the things that's changed is we have to justify the grants that we get to pay people like Steve and other presenters that are not from the conference. Folks in the conference, Steve, we expect they're going to give us their time. But folks who we invite in and take their time and come to us from other places with expertise, we make sure we cover. So we need to justify why we're asking for grants and the effect that it's having. Again, here's my email. Let me just send it here. I can figure out how to do that. Let Let me see. Here it is. No, it's not. Here it is. There we go.
And while you're doing that, if I could make a blatant plug,
Yes.
if Derek could send out a link to my website, there's a lot
Yes.
of information at the website. There's also a lot of information at my YouTube channel. So there's a different, some of those are the same and some of those are different subjects that are on the YouTube channel. So those are places that you can go for a lot of resources and a lot more stuff that we covered today, only snippets here and there of.
Yeah,
So,
we have it up early in the thing, so I clicked on it, so thank you.
okay, that's all free. That's just, you
Website.
know, my gift to you.
Thank you.
If you can just email me with a few words about how this has helped you, how, if it's important to you, tell us why, so we can share that with the congregational development team, I guess it is now, so that we can say we're really doing some good ministry here and connecting pastors who otherwise may not be able to connect this way.
And share it with me. I'd love to hear it.
So we're glad to pass it on.
And I assume, Dennis, that Derek has already sent you the my email. If you got any
That's
further
correct.
questions, email me. We can get in touch. We can arrange a Zoom.
And Steve, I'm sure this will not be the last time we see you.
Well, next March, you know.
Next, I was thinking about that. We could do a March Steve Petty month or a pretty month, right? Petty month. I know on the too many.
Small, insignificant, right.
No, I've got my sister, my daughter-in-law's, her name is Pretty. And then we work with another consultant whose name is Pretty. So I'm never sure which one I'm talking to.
Well, it's petty. It stands for small and insignificant, and I'm 6'6". So you know, it just.
Oh, there you go. Small and insignificant.
Alrighty.
So, great, folks. May the Lord be with you and bless you in all you do in your ministry. May you be blessings to those who come in contact with you, and maybe blessings and be blessed by our Lord Jesus. Praise the Lord. Amen, folks.
I'll
Amen.
be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.